Good afternoon. Thank you all for being here today at the Ukraine Accountability Conference. My name is Jacqueline Nienhuis with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. It's a pleasure to introduce to you our honorable hosts. From left to right on stage, Mr. Reiners, EU Commissioner for Justice, Mr. Hoekstra, Minister of Foreign Affairs for the Netherlands, and Mr. Kahn, ICC Prosecutor, and of course our honorable guest, Mrs. Venediktova, General Prosecutor for Ukraine. We will start this press conference with brief statements, then I'll open up the room for questions. Please ask them in English, and one of our runners will come to you with a microphone. And now I would like to invite Mr. Hoekstra for the first statement.
Thank you, and ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. During today's conference, we saw reports of a Russian missile strike that killed at least 12 people, and one of them was a child. And I am sure that I speak for everyone who is here today when I say that news like this convinces us even more of the necessity and the urgency of justice. More than 20,000 war crimes and crimes of aggression have been reported in Ukraine. And the sad conclusion is that it doesn't stop there. Last year, there were more than 6,000 ongoing international core crimes investigations in the EU alone. Impunity is a massive problem in Ukraine, in Europe, and in the rest of the world. And this problem requires a unified response, ensuring that for Ukraine, all roads eventually lead to justice. And that when atrocities occur in the future, all roads lead to justice there too. Today's conference was an important step towards that strategy. And I'm truly impressed by the contributions of participating countries. More than 20 million to strengthen accountability and justice. And many participants have announced to support the ICC and Ukraine Prosecutor's Office by sending experts for evidence gathering and for other activities. But perhaps I am most impressed by the fact that we're really doing this together. Today was truly teamwork. The road to justice requires more money, more action, more dialogue, and more coordination. The Netherlands is donating an additional €1 million to the ICC. We've also pledged an additional €1 million to support the UN Human Rights Field Office in Ukraine. And we are pledging €1 million for psychosocial support for victims of sexual violence. We're stepping up our cooperation with the ICC and with the Ukrainian Prosecutor General. And we're also sharing specialized psychosocial expertise with relevant partners. To support Ukraine further, the Netherlands has also stepped forward to intervene at the interstate case that Ukraine has raised against Russia at the European Court of Human Rights. Ladies and gentlemen, our most important win today is that this conference is just the beginning. We are setting up a collaboration initiative allowing us to fight impunity better, together, also in the future. Because our joint voices must not be a one-off exercise. Our combined efforts must and will not stop here today. We need to translate our shared and strong conviction for justice into a unified answer against impunity, and use the results of this conference as a blueprint to respond to cruelties and crimes committed in Ukraine and in the rest of the world. Thank you very much.
Mr. Kahn.
Well, thank you so much for being here. This is really a very important day. I personally, and on behalf of the Office of the Prosecutor, I'm really indebted to the leadership shown by the Foreign Minister of the Kingdom of the Netherlands and the Commissioner for Justice of the European Union, and really proud and humbled to be sitting next to the great Prosecutor General Venediktova of Ukraine. Words are cheap. too much has been promised for too long. And I think today, from many vantage points, represents a realization that we as lawyers and investigators need to take the law off the page and put it into action. Politicians and diplomats and others realize that promises cannot evaporate on the lips the moment that they are uttered. And the realization that to do that requires hard work, it requires stamina. And our business is evidence, not politics. Our obligation is to investigate incriminating and exculpatory evidence equally, subject it to forensic standards, and then to submit it to independent and impartial judges in due course. Only then can the rule of law be rendered stronger and more effective. So in this moment of desolation, and of course you would have seen the photographs in the foyer as you come in and see the sunlight, the photographs of Ukraine in the sun, and then you go through the corridor of darkness with the desolation. We need to find a way to make sure the law works more effectively. I think already we knew the 43 states, 1/3 of all the state parties to the Rome Statute had referred the Ukraine situation to the court. There will be a declaration in due course that 45 states have signed up to, which is a promise to show the stamina moving forward. But if we are to resist the failings of the past, to have this stampede that is sometimes seen of different actors running to crime scenes, we need to be coordinated. We need to have dialogue. We need to have communication. And the dialogue group that is going to be established in due course is an important means, respecting the independence of different mandate holders, to work together. And today, the fact that in addition to the high-level foreign ministers and, of course, the Prosecutor General, but the fact that the High Commissioner of Human Rights attended, gave a video statement, and the members of the United Nations, special representatives for children in armed conflict or sexual violence in conflict or for prevention of genocide, it's important that we speak with one voice and we can divide the work effectively to avoid duplication, but to ensure that justice is delivered. Now, this is going to require a lot of action. We're going to launch in a very short period of time, along with Eurojust and the Genocide Network and the Office of the Prosecutor, guidelines for civil society to make sure that do's and don'ts are made clear so that their capacity can be fully harnessed in a way that makes sure that evidence collected can meet international standards. The same will be done in relation to national authorities. The guidelines, again, in the next 2 weeks or 3 weeks, that will be published. Now, it's important, as we use technology as well to move forward, that we use this as a moment of coming together, a wake-up call that injustice is a threat to democracy, it's a threat to the rule of law, and this has to go beyond Ukraine, because every life matters. No people of the world are more precious than other people of the world. And we need to use this moment to be a new awakening that the rule of law means more than human rights. It means more than normative principles, critically important those principles are. It's required for peace, to avoid the hellish scenes that you would have seen that unfortunately are suffered by the people of Ukraine, but also in other parts of the world. So I think it's an important event. It's not a talk shop. It's an action shop, and if we deliver on the commitments collectively, hopefully the promise of justice can be more than pious hopes and wishful prayers. They can be delivered before independent and impartial courts, whether in Ukraine, whether they're in the ICC, or whether they're in the courts of national authorities. Justice is too precious to sacrifice and look away from. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mr. Reiners?
No, thank you. Good afternoon. I want to say that yesterday we have published our rule of law report about the 27 member states, but today it's also a very important day for the rule of law and for justice. And I want to thank the Minister of Foreign Affairs of the Netherlands for the organization of such a conference. It was a very important day to show the unity of many countries in the world, but also many organizations to support Ukraine. And it was very important to organize such a dialogue with such a conference to prove that. Of course, it's an important day to organize the unity of all the countries and organizations trying to take part in the process. And I'm sure that we have a lot of things to do to continue to work together. But certainly the main issue today is to organize a good coordination of not only our words, but also our actions. And first of all, to support the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, of course, Irina Venediktova, because she's at work on the ground in an unsafe situation in Ukraine, and we are very proud to see such a capacity to collect so many evidence to try to organize prosecutions and then trials about the atrocities committed in Ukraine. And we try also to give the same support for the ICC and for Kahn, the prosecutor. And I was very proud to see today that there were so many new pledges from member states, from organizations to send more experts, to send some money to. And it will be important to have a roadmap to continue to do that, not only for some weeks, for some months, maybe more than that, because it will be a long process. That's the first element, and we try to organize a good coordination of all the supports provided to the Ukrainian Prosecutor General, but also the ICC. Second element, we will continue, of course, to push pressure on Russia, and we'll continue to have a correct implementation of all the sanctions. Tomorrow, I will share again a task force freeze and seize to see how it's possible to go further in the way to freeze assets of oligarchs and entities. Till now, we have frozen 13.8 billion euros in the European Union member states, and we want to continue and to see how it's possible with judicial procedure to seize some assets. And the goal is to put the money coming from the confiscations in a common fund to give the money back to Ukraine and to the Ukrainians. And then, of course, about the war crimes and accountability, it's also very important to see that we are trying to use all the existing tools that we have and to reinforce those tools. Of course, the national jurisdictions, first of all in Ukraine, but also in 14 member states of the European Union, because we have started in those member states investigations about war crimes due to the universal jurisdiction in those member states. We have also, of course, the possibility to work with the ICC, and we'll continue to do that because the ICC is also on the ground. It's the same with the European Court of Human Rights, because there are so many violations of human rights in Ukraine. I'm just thinking about the property rights of many Ukrainians, and they have lost their houses, they have lost quite everything in Ukraine, and it's very important to take into account that in the different procedure at the national level, before the ICC, but also before the European Court of Human Rights. And of course, in the EU, we try to provide all the possible tools to help the prosecutors to organize investigations, prosecutions, and then to go to trials. And to do that, we are using first Eurojust. And Eurojust, we have now a joint investigation team with Ukraine and 5 member states of the European Union, Poland, Slovakia, and the 3 Baltic states, with, for the first time, the participation of the ICC and a good collaboration with our colleagues from the US. And if it's possible, I will be very pleased to see other member states having started investigation at the national level, taking part in the joint investigation team. You know that we have also amended the regulation dedicated to Eurojust to give the possibility to Eurojust to store all the evidence collected in Ukraine and in the testimonies of refugees in all member states, and then to exchange those evidence with all the prosecutors and all the possible actors. And of course, to do that, we need to act in a full respect for the rule of law. So we have kind to provide guidance to all the actors to organize the way to collect evidence in a full respect for the rule of law and fundamental rights. And of course, the ICC at the international level will be maybe the most important actor, and we urge all the participants today, but certainly also Ukraine, to ratify the Rome Statute. It's very important to show that there is a clear commitment to take part in the Rome Statute and to organize all the investigations in Ukraine in full respect for the competence of the ICC. But again, I'm very proud that it was possible to show such a unity today and to make progress in the dialogue, to have a good coordination, because it's the main issue that we have, not only, I said, for the next months and years, maybe for more than that, maybe for decades. You know that we are still now, till now, starting some investigations and prosecutions about the genocide in Rwanda or in Srebrenica. And so it's very important to think that we are not just working for the people in office now, for the successor, but maybe also for the next generation. It will be a long journey, but it was an important day today to start such a journey.
Mrs. Venediktova.
Thank you very much. Good afternoon, dear friends. You know, we have the city in the center of Ukraine. It is Vinnytsia. It is again the center of Ukraine. Today, 20 people killed by Russian missiles, including 3 children. 52 injured by Russian missile, including children. And this information we have every day from morning till night to morning. We see more and more facts of war crimes. It's more now than 23,000 of such cases only about war crimes, when Ukrainians are killed, tortured, raped, and so on and so on. That's why these meetings, this huge honorable conference was very important to take this war in focus. I understand that we have huge number of wars, unfortunately, on our planet. And this war is not the first and unfortunately not the last. But again, we should do our lessons and we should have some results because we are free, civilized people. I appreciate very much personally His Excellency Mr. Hoekstra for organizing this conference in the place of peace and justice. I appreciate very much His Excellency Mr. Reinders, who is with us from first days of this very aggressive war when in full-scale invasion started. I appreciate very much prosecutor of ICC Karim Khan, who started his own investigations as soon as possible and came in Ukraine 3 times. I understand people of your countries. I understand people who take our refugees, who see how prices will rise up from month to month. But dear friends, today's 5th month, when we have this situation in the center of Europe, we mentioned today several times that impunity is not an option, that instruments of international law, instruments of international humanitarian law should protect people, should prevent such aggression in the future. And we are very modern people. We understand the value of human lives. We understand that we are responsible before our future generation. I am Prosecutor General of Ukraine. Every day we have extra 200, 300 cases only about war crimes. I think that actually we should do our steps very fast, because it's true, impunity is not the option. People who are responsible for such aggressive war, we should to take specific words for this. This is war, very aggressive, very brutal war. People who are responsible for this should be punished. And this is first step. And we understand that if we decided don't think about it, how we don't think, for example, about it in Georgia, in Chechnya, in Syria, in 2014 in Donetsk and Lugansk and Crimea, now we see that it will be just worse and worse. And we all are very strong because we are united. And I think this is the most big value what we have now, that we have here all these men and all others men who were on this conference and who are besides them in their states, who are ready to stop such precedents on our planet. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We have now time for a few questions. First question, I'd like to add to 1+1 TV, Ukraine. There's a mic.
So my question is about introduction the special ad hoc tribunal for Ukraine, which Ukraine is asking for. Are there any negotiations? What are the results? Will it be introduced? What its jurisdictions will be, and who will pay for it, actually? Thank you.
The question is to me, ma'am. Okay. No, I think it's a very valid point. It was mentioned today by Minister Kuleba and by President Zelensky as well. And the reason is that aggression, which in a way is actually an understatement, it is the illegal war that the Russians started, is the crime of crimes, the mother of all crimes in this particular situation. Because if the invasion would not have happened, we would not be talking about investigating all the atrocities that we have been discussing and that we're investigating. So I do think there is merit into looking into this also because the way I understand it, and I'm with all the legal expertise on my left and right hand side, I'm a bit cautious in my description, but the way I understand it, we have to fill the vacuum, and the ICC here doesn't have the jurisdiction. So I can imagine that we do look into coming up with such a tribunal. As the Netherlands, we will take an open look into this. It will probably not be easy. There is merit in doing that with as many friends as possible from the international community, but we will seek to support Ukraine where we can.
Thank you. Next question. Gentleman over there.
Yes, I have a question. Michel Keres, NRC, but I have a question for Mr. Kahn. Where do you see the ICC going in this respect? What do you would be future tasks you think the ICC could take on? And for Minister Hoekstra, I have a question. You wanted to have a coordination of all the national and international initiatives in this field. How would that look like? What did the conference came up with in the end?
Well, the future task is to get to the truth. I mean, that's what justice is about, isn't it? We have an obligation under Article 54 of the Rome Statute to investigate incriminating and exculpatory evidence equally. We have to do that in a very sober and responsible way, realizing that we're living in a world of truth and also falsehood, of accurate news and fake news, and we can't be gullible. And we use the expertise that we have, those that are also secondments that are joining us, technology to authenticate information, and to see what crimes may have been committed and who's responsible. The second aspect is redefining success. I have talked about that even before I was elected, well before the Ukraine conflict started. It's not only about the ICC. The kind of crimes within our jurisdiction are normally so wide, so heavy, that no one court alone can cope. Ukraine, of course, under the principle of complementarity, has the primary obligation in international law and the primary right to try to prosecute. But we have a very good relationship with the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, and we're trying to work in a way that's intelligent, looking at the types of skills that we have and where cases can be most properly brought. And the other aspect is using technology. We need to realize that the massive data sets that are produced by telephones that you have in your pockets and that people have around the world require technology, but we need to use it. We need to be able to grapple with those data sets, not only to present cases to the judges of the ICC, but in a way that we should also be able to provide that to other state parties, because the fora is not important. It doesn't matter if it's the flag of the Netherlands or the flag of the ICC or Germany or France. The point is the evidence that one has received, as long as there's an informed consent, should be used as effectively as possible to narrow the impunity gaps that are, around the world, actually. And we need to start here with Ukraine and do better in all our situations, because ultimately, if we have a two-standard approach, it's going to undermine confidence in the rule of law. Notwithstanding double standards that exist in the world, we need to move to a world in which the law means something and everybody needs to adhere to a greater extent to the law than maybe has been the case in the past.
Thank you.
The question of Mr. Karras to me was about coordination, and he's very right. There were multiple objectives for this conference, of course, all under the header of doing justice. The conference is about action, it is about awareness, it is about perseverance, but it is also about coordination. And also from that respect, to me, the conference truly was a success. and that has to do with the specifics that countries pledge, but also the build-up towards the conference, because then actually you can match the supply of you can make sure that the supply of countries and the demand of the ICC are being brought in sync. And you see that countries specifically pledge money, they specifically pledge resources for the ICC. Various countries made various offerings, and a range of countries also pledged to send a team similar to the teams of France and the Netherlands that have been going there before. So I think we made a huge step in coordination, but let's also be realistic. Coordination will continue to be needed because this will be a longer-term effort.
Thank you. Reuters, Anthony? Yep. Is that a mic?
Hi there, Anthony Deutsch, Reuters. First question for the Minister Hoekstra. If you were to say what today's kind of biggest achievement was, I mean, you said there's going to be a political statement from 45 countries. But what out of today do you think will, in practical terms, will help Ukraine in this huge task of prosecuting war crimes? And I have a second question, if I may, for Prosecutor General Venediktova. You've launched 2 trials so far of war crimes in domestic courts. Are you expecting any more trials soon? And if so, which type of crimes do you expect will be in those trials? Thank you.
You know, it's always difficult to single out one thing. I just mentioned to Mr. Karras a combination of awareness, action, perseverance, and coordination, of course, all under the header of justice. But maybe the most important thing of a day like today, with all the stories and also the personal accounts, and hearing what is happening in terms of completely innocent civilians who are being butchered with their hands tied behind their back. Women and men being raped, and sometimes family members being forced to look at that. Torture, and that at a massive scale. Discussing that, and you know, intellectually everyone understands how awful that is, but hearing that and making that sink in and feeling that, I think that fuels the perseverance of the international community, and so it should.
About your answer about our cases. Actually, we have now 6 judgments from first instance of the court, and it is about war crimes killing civilian, then shelling civilian infrastructure, and now all these cases now in appeal instance. And we have 4 cases which are now in the trial of first instance. It is 1 case about killing the husband and raping their wife. This person is not physically in Ukraine. We prosecute him in absentia. Then it is about shelling civilian infrastructure. And we have 127 suspicions. It means that we started to prosecute these people. We identify them. It's absolutely different kind of war crimes. You know that under Ukrainian legislation we have only 1 article war crime, but we use actually Rome Statute and look at this, and we understand that it's only a question of time when Ukraine will ratify Rome Statute. We respect and we want to use these very high standards of international humanitarian law. That's why we have these types of war crimes for us. And if we speak about these 127 people, they tortured, they raped, they killed civilians, they shelled to civilian infrastructure, they looted. Actually, we have huge number of cases and all 3 pages of Rome Statute which are connected to war crimes. Unfortunately, we had and have in Ukraine, we have now in these 127 suspicions, you see that we have 23,000 cases. It means that it's a huge part of the job which we should do. If we speak about crime of aggression, we have more than 70 cases about crime of aggression. And in our main anchor came, it is now 624 suspects, people whom we started to prosecute at the top level of militaries, politicians, top propaganda agents of Russian Federation, all of people who are responsible for starting this in full-scale invasion, except these people, Troika, such called Troika, which has functional immunity.
Thank you. Yeah. Lady in the back. Yeah, you with the green dress. Yes, there you are.
Hi, it's a question for the two prosecutors. Just to clarify on the issue of complementarity, will the ICC and Ukraine be able to work together to create a war crimes tribunal, even though Russia and Ukraine haven't signed up to the Rome Statute? And if Ukraine signs up soon, can the investigations be done retrospectively? Thank you.
Well, we're working together. If I might go first, if you don't mind. We're working very closely together in relation to the Rome Statute. And the Rome Statute is not to be sniffed at. After all, if one surveys the existing legal architecture after Nuremberg, the former Yugoslavia, Karadzic, Mladic, Milosevic, there was no crime of aggression, and yet there was justice. If one looks at Rwanda and John Kabanda, the former prime minister, there was no crime of aggression, of course, an internal armed conflict. But in relation to Liberia and Charles Taylor, again, it was crimes against humanity and war crimes. So we have more than enough to get our teeth into, more than enough that makes a difference to the victims, more than enough that underlines the importance of human life, the rights of children not to be deliberately targeted and terribly affected by conflicts, and of course, the rights of men and women not to be subjected to sexual and gender-based violence. I much rather focus on what we've got rather than lamenting what we don't have. I don't think we can, at this moment of this critical juncture, be so self-indulgent. And I think where I'm really positive is working with the Prosecutor General of Ukraine and her team, trying to deal with some very difficult issues, but in a way with underpinned by a belief that where there's a will, there's a way. And I think we're moving very positively, and I hope that we are going to accelerate in a way that can demonstrate to the victims and the survivors, whether they're refugees in Poland or displaced throughout Europe, or whether they're in subways in Ukraine, that the law is not impotent. The law can do more than crawl. It is not necessarily so pedestrian. That's the challenge we've got, and we have to deliver on it.
As for me, I want to answer that we started to cooperate before in full-scale invasion. It was in previous year, and we started to build this infrastructure, how to implement all instruments which need ICC to work on the ground in Ukraine. Because for ICC, it's very important to be objective and do their job independent. We understand it and we respect it. From other side, I want to say that Prosecutor Kahn started his own investigation in the first days of March. Then, firstly, in the history of ICC, Office of Prosecutor ICC joined a joint investigation team. That's why, for me, as a prosecutor of Ukraine, I see not only for process. Process for us is very important because it should be correct. And in Ukraine, in international platform, and in all 18 states which started their own proceedings and their own investigations. But for me, it's very important, more important, results. These results should be when our victims are still alive, actually. Now I speak about I want to make two stresses. Again, nobody knows what will be tomorrow. I gave you example Vinnytsia, the city in the center of Ukraine. Nobody knows where this missile will be tomorrow or after tomorrow. We saw it in Odessa, in Kremenchuk. It could be shopping mall, it could be hospital, it could be kindergarten, it could be everything. And from other side, this justice should be not in 20 years, not in 30 years. We have such examples. Justice is delayed, justice is denied, actually. it's possible. That's why for us, for Ukrainian side, it's very important to do this job with international community, because support and assistance of international community, it's very, very value in all levels, in politician level, in military level, in economical level, in judicial level, in all levels, it's very value for us. But from other side, we understand that we should do this step by step together to the common goal. Common goal, it is accountability and justice.
Telegraaf. Peter. Ja.
Peter Winterman, de Telegraaf. For Mr. Hoekstra, like many other countries, the Netherlands supplies weapons to Ukraine. Is it possible to ascertain whether those weapons fall in Russian hands and whether they are used in war crimes?
We have no indication of that. And as you know, after the conversations we've also had with many of the nations that support weapons with the Secretary General of NATO, we are a bit cautious in describing what we exactly deliver and when we deliver it. Even though you are aware, and the Dutch public is aware, of a number of things that we have done in the past, such as the Panzerhaubitsers recently with Germany and a couple of other things. So in theory, you know, these things are always possible, but I have no indication that that is happening. And I think both we, our allies, and the Ukrainian forces are very careful to make sure that this doesn't happen.
I think we have room for one more question. Ampe, lady next to you.
Thank you very much for taking my question. Erika Kienitz from the Associated Press. Question for Commissioner Didier Reynaud. You had mentioned there's 13.8 billion euros in Russian money that's been seized by European member states. Is there currently any mechanism for confiscating that money to create a compensation fund for Ukraine? If not, what needs to happen in order to make that possible?
So first of all, for the moment, we have organized a way to freeze money. So it's an administrative process by the treasuries in all the member states. And this is why I said it's for a total amount of 13.8 billion euros. But that's the way to freeze. So the property is still in the hands of the oligarchs and the entities. It's just an administrative process. But it's also possible to go further and to organize with a judicial process a way to seize the same kind of assets if there is a link with a criminal offense, corruption, money laundering. And you know that we have asked to the Council and the Parliament in the European Union to extend the list of Eurocrimes to make a Eurocrime of the fact that there is an attempt to circumvent the sanctions, to bypass the sanctions. And of course, with that, it will be easier maybe to seize and to organize a confiscation. We have received the support of the Parliament. It was approved by the Parliament. It will be the same by the Council maybe just after the summer. And we will come from the Commission with the secondary steps, or the secondary law, the directive in October, to go very fast. It's already possible in some member states. So the first phase is to freeze with an administrative process, and then it's possible in justice, of course, to obtain a condemnation and to seize the assets. If it's the case, we have asked all the member states to put the money coming from the confiscation in a common fund to help Ukraine, so to give the money back to the Ukrainian people. Of course, there are different other kinds of requests that we have listened today from the Ukrainian side to see is it possible to do more and to try to seize assets from the Central Bank of Russia, to give a very concrete example. Of course, we are very prudent on this because we want to have a link with a criminal offense. But of course, we have decided to freeze assets also for the central bank. So it's possible to do that for a long period of time. The idea is to ask, of course, to Russia to take part in the reconstruction. If it's not, it's possible to continue to freeze the assets of the Central Bank of Russia, and that is for more money than the assets of the oligarchs. We are speaking maybe of 200-300 billions in the US and in Europe.
Thank you. With that, we're closing this press conference. Thank you all. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thanks.
Have a safe trip home.